People say you should invest in what you know. My husband, Marcus, invested in lies. And me, I invested in things he could never understand. He thought my confidence was sewn from discount business suits, but he didn't know I owned the textile mill. When he tried to pull one thread, he unraveled his entire world. This is how you skin a narcissist, layer by layer, until nothing but the ugly truth is left. My name is Alara Vance, and on the night my marriage died, I was wearing a prototype. The air at the Logicor annual charity gala was thin and sharp, heavy with the scent of forced smiles and expensive perfume. We were at the top of a glass tower in Denver, Colorado, the city lights glittering below like a carpet of diamonds. Logicor, the logistics tech firm that paid for our lives, loved this kind of thing. It screamed transparency. My husband, Marcus Thorne, was the 38-year-old vice president of strategy. He was a man built by committee, handsome, charming, and utterly hollow. I stood beside him, a 34-year-old enigma he'd long given up trying to solve. The dress I wore was a challenge. It was asymmetrical, architectural, made of a fabric that seemed to drink the light. It was a piece of wearable art, an experiment. Marcus hated it. He spotted his executive circle, threw a heavy arm around my shoulders, and pulled me into the group. "My wife, Ilara," he boomed, his voice slick with manufactured charm. "She just loves her little dress-up games." The men laughed, a chorus of polite barks. Marcus grinned, patting my shoulder as if I were a favored pet that had just performed a slightly embarrassing trick. The heat of humiliation crept up my neck, but I kept my smile frozen in place. Across the room, through the forest of black tuxedos, I saw her, Chloe Jensen, 26, blonde, and a brand specialist for the company. She was watching me, and she wasn't laughing. She was smiling, a tiny, pitying quirk of the lips. She, of course, was poured into a floor-length beige gown. It was safe, expensive, and utterly forgettable. Her smile said, "You poor thing, trying so hard." The drive home to our sterile, modern mansion in Willow Creek Estates was silent. The mask of the happy couple dissolved the moment the oversized steel door hissed shut. Marcus didn't bother with foreplay. He went straight for the kill. He shed his tuxedo jacket, tossing it onto a chair that cost more than a car. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey and faced me, not with regret, but with the buzzing energy of a man who's just closed a deal. "I need to tell you something," he said. It wasn't a confession. It was an announcement. I moved some money from the joint investment fund. I stood perfectly still, the experimental fabric of my dress rustling softly. "Which fund?" "You know." He waved his glass. "The one you dump money into. Your weird hobby fund." "My weird hobby fund." "The account I managed myself." "How much?" "Marcus. $150,000. He said it so casually. $150,000. He took a sip of his whiskey. "I didn't move it. Alara, I borrowed it. It's an investment." "An investment in what?" "In Chloe." He said her name without a trace of shame. My heart didn't break. It turned to ice. "She was in some serious debt," he explained, starting to pace the Italian marble floor. "And this opportunity came up. An advanced personal branding course in Switzerland, top of the line. This is going to set her up for life." He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and his eyes were cold. "You just spend it on those weird clothes anyway," he jested, pointing at the dress I was still wearing. "At least Chloe is using it for something practical." The room was silent save for the hum of the air filtration system. I felt a strange calm settle over me. He had just handed me the weapon and pointed out the target. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply asked, "Practical. How is it practical?" "Marcus." He smiled. He thought I was finally engaging, finally seeing his logic. He thought he was winning. "Come here." He strode to his briefcase, pulling out a sleek, leather-bound portfolio. "She's not just a pretty face. Alara, She's brilliant. He tossed it onto the coffee table. Chloe's business plan. I picked it up. The cover was generic. The font was boring. I flipped open to the executive summary. I had to stop myself from laughing. It wasn't brilliant. It was a bad copy. I recognized the mission statement, the 5-year projections, the very syntax. He was funding a plagiarized, half-baked idea I had seen pitched and rejected at a tech brunch 2 years ago. "She's going to be a star," he said, his voice thick with self-satisfaction. He drained his glass and put it down with a definitive click. He sat on the sofa, patting the cushion beside him. I didn't move. "Ooh, which brings me to my next point," he said, his voice dropping into that reasonable, patronizing tone he used when he was about to deny a vacation request. "We need to talk about diversifying our relationships." I stared at him. Chloe is very open-minded. Alara, she understands the pressures I'm under. She understands me. And I think, if you just gave it a chance, you'd find this new arrangement refreshing. He was offering me a place in a harem of his own making. He had stolen my money, given it to his mistress, insulted my life's passion, and was now suggesting a threesome, all before I'd even had a chance to take off my shoes. He saw my dress as a joke. He saw Chloe's beige gown as an investment. He had just made the worst calculation of his life. I waited until the sound of Marcus's self-satisfied breathing settled into a deep, rhythmic snore. The whiskey always did the trick. I let the silence of the house settle for 10 minutes, then 30. When I was sure he was truly unconscious, I stood. I slipped out of the dress, the architectural masterpiece, and let it fall to the floor in the center of our cavernous, moonlit bedroom. I did not hang it up. I left it there, a challenge he wouldn't even notice. I pulled on a heavy silk robe and walked, barefoot, down the cold marble hallway to my study. This room was my sanctuary. It was the only space in the house that Marcus didn't try to optimize. He called it cluttered. I called it curated. Where he saw chaos, I saw history. And on the main wall, staring down at me with an expression of amused contempt, was my mother, Isabel. The portrait was massive. She was painted in her late 40s, wrapped in an impossible cocoon of vintage fabrics, her eyes sharp and intelligent. Isabel Vance. Denver high society had never known what to do with her. She was an eccentric, a collector of radical art and even more radical fashion. She was respected for her old money name, but feared for her refusal to be boring. Marcus knew I had an inheritance. He knew about the account I used for my hobbies. What he didn't know, what he was too arrogant to ever ask, was the structure of that inheritance. The $150,000 he had just wired to his 26-year-old mistress wasn't my money. It was a test. My father, a kind but painfully conventional man, had set up that hobby fund for me. But the instructions for its creation came directly from my mother's will. Isabel had called it the peacock trap, a sum of money, just large enough to be tempting, set apart from the real fortune. It was bait, designed to see if the man I married was a partner or a predator. The true legacy, Isabel's legacy, was separate. It was a $5 million trust, established long before I ever met Marcus, locked away in documents he had never bothered to read. It was premarital, independent, and utterly untouchable by him. My fortress, built by my mother. I traced the spine of a leather-bound art book. The trust was designed to spin off a comfortable, but not extravagant amount of interest. It was enough to fund my hobbies. But the principal, the $5 million, was locked. It remained locked until one of two conditions was met. The first, my 35th birthday. The second, my divorce, finalized on the grounds of proven adultery. I had just turned 34. Marcus, in his desperate attempt to fund his beige-obsessed protégé, had just handed me an early birthday present. He had just unlocked the vault. "He's a peacock, Alara." My mother's voice, dry as autumn leaves, whispered in my memory. I looked up at her painted eyes. They're beautiful, darling, and they make a lot of noise, but their feathers are hollow. There's nothing inside but a small, greedy heart. Don't ever let a peacock roost in your house. I had let him roost for 6 years. I had let him peck away at my confidence, calling my passions weird and my intellect quaint. But here was the final, beautiful secret, the one that made my heart beat hard against my ribs, not with fear, but with anticipation. Marcus, and indeed my own lawyers, assumed that $5 million trust was sitting quietly in a portfolio of low-risk bonds and municipal funds. They assumed I was as conservative as my father. They had forgotten I was Isabel's daughter. My mother didn't raise me to be safe. 4 years ago, I had used the full discretionary power of my trust. I had liquidated the entire portfolio. I took that $5 million, every single cent, and I made the biggest gamble of my life. I became the sole, silent, anonymous angel investor for a designer so rebellious, so obscure. He was considered a phantom in the industry, a Belgian recluse named Armand. He had a vision. He had a brand name Atelier Cinder. He had nothing else. I gave him the fuel to build his fire. I looked back down the hallway, toward the bedroom where my husband slept. The dress I had left on the floor, the costume he had publicly mocked, the asymmetrical experiment he found so ridiculous. It was an Atelier Cinder prototype. Marcus hadn't just insulted my taste. He hadn't just stolen $150,000. He had just spit in the face of the single largest investment of my life. He laughed at the house that I, not he, had built. I woke up before he did, which was unusual. I stayed in bed, facing the window, and practiced my breathing. I needed it to be shallow, shaky. When he finally stirred, the mattress shifting under his weight, I let out the small, broken sound I had been rehearsing. He was instantly alert. Ilara. I turned, making sure my eyes were wide and tear-brimmed. I had stared at the wall without blinking for 3 minutes to achieve the effect. I couldn't sleep. This was the part he understood. This was the script he was expecting. The devastated wife. He sat up, the sheet pooling around his waist, and adopted a look of pained, patient understanding. "Look," he said, his voice the smooth baritone of a CEO addressing a grieving employee. "I know last night was a lot." I drew my knees to my chest, making myself small. You said you gave her the money. You said about diversifying." "I did," he said, and I marveled at the complete absence of guilt. He saw it as a business proposal. "Ilara, we're not in college anymore. People grow. Relationships evolve. This is a good thing for us. It takes the pressure off." "I need time," I whispered, looking at my hands. "I just need time to think about your open offer." A slow smile spread across his face. He thought he'd won. He thought my hesitation was me processing the logistics, not the betrayal. He placed a generous hand on my knee. "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need. I know this is new for you." He stood up, magnificent in his naked arrogance, and headed for the shower. "I've got that big presentation at 9, but I'll clear my evening." He was offering me a dinner date to discuss my own humiliation. While the sound of the shower filled the house, I went to my study. I didn't reach for the phone. I logged into our joint bank accounts. The $150,000 transfer to a Swiss account was there, clean and obvious. He hadn't even tried to hide it. When he emerged, wrapped in a towel, I was sitting on the edge of the unmade bed, clutching a tablet. "Marcus," I said, my voice still calibrated to vulnerable. I need to see everything. See everything. The accounts, the statements." I looked up at him, injecting a note of feigned panic. If we're making these kinds of investments, I just need to understand where we are, financially. I feel so stupid." "I've just been letting you handle everything," he chuckled. It was a patronizing, affectionate sound. "Oh, sweetheart, don't you worry your pretty, creative head about it." "Please, Marcus," I insisted. I need this, to feel in control of something, to understand. This. He liked me, begging for control, for understanding. It reinforced his belief that I was a dreamy woman, incapable of comprehending the complex world of finance he inhabited. He saw it as a prelude to me accepting his new world order. Fine, fine, he said, sighing dramatically. He went to his desk, logged into his master portal, and spun the laptop around. There, all of it. The checking, the investment portfolios, the house files. Knock yourself out. He left to get dressed, whistling. He was so confident I was too artistic to read a balance sheet. He was wrong. I scrolled past the hobby fund he had drained. I scrolled past the main portfolio, and then I found it. The home equity line of credit. He hadn't just taken the $150,000. That was just the appetizer. He had taken out a $250,000 mortgage against our house. My house. The house I had paid for in full, with premarital assets, before he ever moved in. The house his name was on for convenience, but not for ownership. I scrolled. My breath caught, but not in a gasp. It was a sharp intake of pure, cold fury. There, on the digital dotted line, was my signature, a sloppy, unconvincing, and utterly criminal forgery. He hadn't just stolen. He hadn't just cheated. He had committed a felony. He had just given me the ace. I closed the laptop, my expression smoothing back into one of practiced confusion. It's all so much, I said quietly when he returned, knotting his tie. See? He said, kissing the top of my head. I'll handle it. You just think about us. As soon as his car cleared the driveway, I was back in my study. I closed the door. I locked it. I picked up my phone and dialed the only number in my favorites list. Dina Hawes. Her voice was pure gravel and coffee. Dina, I said. It's Ilara. I know, she said. What did he do this time? Insult your choice of curtains. He forged my signature on a $250,000 mortgage, and he's sleeping with a 26-year-old brand specialist named Chloe. There was a long pause. I heard the sound of a pen clicking. The game, Dina said, is over. The game is over, I confirmed. I'll be at your office in 1 hour. I hung up and was about to head to my closet when my phone buzzed. A new message. It wasn't from Marcus. It was an internal chat notification from the Logicore system, routed to my email. From Chloe Jensen. Subject, just checking in. The message read, Hi, Ilara. I hope this isn't weird. Marcus was just telling me how stressed you've been, and he was really worried about you after last night. You left the gala so early. I just wanted to check in, woman to woman, and see if you were okay. Maybe we could get coffee sometime. She was marking her territory. She was offering me a beige-colored olive branch, pitying me, checking to see if the wife was going to be a problem. I sat at my desk. I typed out a reply. Chloe, what a thoughtful idea. Thank you for reaching out. A meeting is a wonderful suggestion. My lawyer's office. Tomorrow morning at 9, I hit send. It was, of course, a complete lie. Dina would never let that creature in her office. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that the panic would be delicious. The curtain was up. The play had begun. Dinah Hawes's office was on the 42nd floor, a steel and glass box that looked down on the rest of Denver. There was no art on the walls, only framed diplomas and bar certifications. Dinah didn't believe in distractions. She was a shark, as my mother used to say, and you only called her when there was blood in the water. She didn't get up when I walked in. She was already halfway through the email I'd sent from the car. She just pointed a pen at the chair opposite her desk. Chloe Jensen, she said, her eyes still on the screen. 26. Lives in a $2,000 a month studio in Lodo. Drives a white Audi. Leased. Has significant student loan debt. Or at least, she did. I sat. You're fast. I hate waste. Ilara, time, money, men. You're bringing me a trifecta. She finally looked up, and her eyes, the color of wet cement, were sharp. "Start from the top and don't cry. It messes up the deposition." I didn't cry. I laid it all out. I spoke in a calm, flat monotone, the way I would describe a painting or a stock portfolio. I told her about the gala, the dress-up comment, the $150,000 loan from the hobby fund, the diversifying relationships proposal. Dina listened, motionless. Then, I gave her the rest. I told her about my mother, Isabel. I told her about the peacock trap. I told her about the real inheritance, the $5 million premarital trust. And I told her about the 2 conditions for its release, my 35th birthday, or divorce on grounds of adultery. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of Dina's mouth. Adultery. So beautifully old-fashioned. Your mother was a piece of work. Alara. She was. I agreed. But that's not the best part. I pushed my tablet across the desk, open to the home equity line of credit. He also forged my signature on a $250,000 loan against my house. Sometime last week, electronically. Dina's smile vanished. She leaned forward. She magnified the image of the sloppy, arrogant signature. She read the digital timestamp. She read the wire transfer details that followed, which showed the funds being moved not to a joint account, but to one solely in Marcus's name. She was silent for a full minute. The only sound in the office was the distant wail of a siren, far below. "Well," she finally said, leaning back in her chair. She steepled her fingers. "This isn't a divorce, Alara. This is a surgery, a dismemberment." "So, Colorado law," I began, "is a community property state. Yes, yes." She cut me off. "Which means he'd normally have a claim to 50% of everything earned during the marriage. He'd argue his VP salary paid for your lifestyle, and your hobby fund would be split. It would be a mess." "But the trust," I countered. "The trust," she said, her voice filled with professional reverence, "is a fortress, premarital, irrevocable, set up by your mother. He can't touch it. He can't see it. It doesn't exist to him. It is, for all legal intents and purposes, invulnerable. And the adultery clause, it's the key," she said. "The moment we file and prove infidelity, the trust unlocks. You're liquid. But that," she tapped the tablet, "the forgery. That's the real prize. It gets me the house back, no questions asked." Dina laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. "The house, Alara, darling. This isn't just grounds for divorce. This is a felony, wire fraud, bank fraud, aggravated identity theft. We're not talking about community property. We're talking about criminal charges, prison time." I felt a cold thrill. "So we use it. We call the police." "No," she said, holding up a hand. "Absolutely not. We don't use it. Not yet. But Dina, you call the police. It becomes the district attorney's case. It's public. It's messy. It's out of our control. Marcus becomes a victim, a desperate man. Whatever. No, we keep this. We hold this back. This is the kill shot. We use this when he gets greedy. We use this to make him sign away everything in a private settlement, just to stay out of a cage. We bleed him dry in a conference room, not a courtroom." She was right. My mother would have adored her. "So what's the plan?" I asked. "The plan is precise." Dina began to type, her fingers flying. "First, we file. I'll have the petition drawn up by noon. We file for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences and adultery. We petition for an emergency ex parte hearing to freeze every joint asset. By the time he's served, his credit cards will be plastic. He won't be able to buy a cup of coffee. When do we serve him? At the worst possible moment," Dina said. "He has a big presentation this week. Thursday," I said. "The board. His entire career depends on it." "Thursday it is," she smiled. "Now, the adultery. It's the key to the trust, so it has to be solid. I'm sure he's been sloppy. What do you need? Dina looked me up and down. I was wearing a structured wool blazer, another atelier cinder piece. You're wearing that, she jested. It looks expensive. It is. Do you have a receipt for it? For all of it, I said. Every piece. I have a detailed inventory. Good, Dina said. That establishes your financial independence and your meticulous record-keeping. She leaned forward, her eyes glinting. Now, go home. Log into his accounts. I want to see the receipts for what he bought her. I returned home to a silent house. The air, which usually felt expansive, now felt like a pressurized cabin. The audit, as Dina called it, began. Marcus wasn't just arrogant, he was lazy. He had assumed my creative mind was too disorganized to ever check the statements for the joint Amex. He was right. I never had. I never had a reason to, but he was wrong to assume I wouldn't know how. I logged in. I opened a spreadsheet. I created 2 columns, Alara and Marcus. My column was a map of my passion. Transactions from rare textile suppliers in Italy. Wires to a small independent foundry in Belgium for custom hardware. Payments to pattern makers in New York. Each one was a unique, expensive, and meticulously documented investment in atelier cinder. Marcus's column was a dumpster fire of desperation. It wasn't just the $150,000. It was the death by 1,000 cuts. It was the daily expenditures that told the real story. Charges from Crate and Barrel, Pottery Barn, Restoration Hardware, thousands of dollars spent on beige sectionals, beige rugs, beige end tables. He was furnishing Chloe's apartment. He was building a nest of crushing neutrality. There were digital subscriptions, hundreds of dollars a month, to self-help gurus and lifestyle enhancement masters. One was literally called the Apex Predator's Mindset. And then, the travel. 2 first-class tickets to Switzerland. 2, not 1. He had told me he was going to a solo strategy retreat in Aspen. He had lied, and he had used our joint points to do it. But the most damning evidence was the shopping. So many charges to high-end designer boutiques. Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton. He was buying her a new wardrobe. But something felt wrong. The charges were odd. They were always for the exact same amount. $1,999 or $2,499. Never a clean number. It looked less like shopping and more like invoicing. I cross-referenced the dates of the charges with his calendar. The days he bought the bags were days he was supposedly in back-to-back meetings. I dug deeper. He had used the joint email account for some of it, but he had a secret one. It wasn't hard to find. His password, for everything, was Logicore VP Numberone. I logged in. It was a sewer. And in that sewer, I found the emails. They weren't from Gucci. They were from BestLuxReplicas.com and AA Mirror Bags. My hands went cold. I wasn't just looking at infidelity. I was looking at small-time fraud. Marcus wasn't just financing Chloe. He was grifting her. He was buying super fake high-end bags for a few $100s, then likely telling Chloe and our credit card company they were the real thing and pocketing the cash difference. He was running a side hustle of deception on his own mistress. I saved everything. The PDF confirmations, the shipping details to a P.O. box. I then turned my attention to his search history, which was still logged in. How to look rich for cheap. Convince wife about polyamory. Best personal branding courses, Switzerland. How to add beneficiary to life insurance. Ways to get wife to be more normal. That last one felt like a small, pathetic sting, but the one before it, life insurance. I knew where he kept the physical documents. In the wall, safe behind a hideous abstract painting he'd bought at a corporate auction. The code was our anniversary. The irony was suffocating. I heard his car in the driveway. I had minutes. I walked to the safe, my heart a cold stone in my chest. I opened it. Inside were the usuals: passports, stock certificates, our marriage license, and there, in a fresh manila envelope, Thorn Policy Addendum. I pulled it out, just as he walked in the front door. Elara, you in your study. His voice boomed. I closed the safe. I spun the dial. I turned to walk out, the envelope in my hand. He met me in the hallway, holding a small, flat designer bag. Hey, he said, smiling, trying to gauge my mood. You've been in here all day. Just thinking, I said, my voice quiet. Well, I saw something today, and it made me think of you. He handed me the bag. Or, rather, it made me think of what we talked about, trying new things. I opened it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a silk scarf. It was a pale, sickly shade of millennial pink. The pattern was a repeating, generic logo. It was the most boring, normal thing I had ever seen. It was an insult, wrapped in silk. It's normal, he said, beaming. I thought you might like to try something normal. You know, like Chloe would. Like other women. Thank you. Marcus, I said. My voice was a perfect flat line. That's very practical. He kissed my forehead, satisfied. I knew you'd see the light. I'm going to grab a drink. As he walked to the kitchen, I walked back to the safe. I palmed the manila envelope. I hadn't had time to wipe my prints from the dial. I took the pale pink scarf, the symbol of his desire to erase me, and I meticulously polished the safe's dial, the handle, and the wall around it until it gleamed. I went back to my study, locked the door, and opened the envelope. He had taken out a new $2 million term life insurance policy on himself. The sole beneficiary, in the event of his death, was not me, his wife. It was Ms. Chloe M. Jensen. He wasn't just planning a new relationship. He was planning an exit. He was planning a future where he and Chloe got rich off his own death, paid for by our joint funds. He was, in every sense, trying to erase me, and he had just given me the evidence to erase him first. I was not there. I didn't need to be. I was at the Denver Art Museum, standing in front of a Clifford still painting a canvas of jagged, violent color. I found it calming. It was Thursday, 10:37 a.m. I knew, at that exact moment. Marcus was standing in the 40th floor glass-walled boardroom at the Logicor Tower. He would be wearing his victory tie, a deep blue. He would be mid-slide on his quarterly strategy presentation, the one he had practiced in front of our bedroom mirror. He would be feeling invincible. Dina had arranged the details with the precision of a military strike. The conference room doors, I was told, opened without a knock. Marcus would have paused, annoyed at the interruption. The woman Dina hired was not a typical process server. She was 6'2", wore steel-toed boots, and had a face that looked like it had argued with granite and won. She walked past the junior executives. She walked directly to the $80,000 mahogany table where the board sat, frozen. The CEO of Logicor, Arthur Blackwell, a man whose conservatism was a core part of his public brand, was watching. I have papers for Marcus Thorne, the woman announced. Her voice, I was promised, would fill the room. Marcus would have attempted a laugh, a nervous, charming little chuckle. I think you have the wrong Marcus Thorne, she repeated, her voice cutting him off. You are being served. She dropped the thick, blue-backed stack of legal documents onto his polished table, right on top of his presentation notes, regarding an emergency asset freeze and a petition for divorce. The silence. It must have been magnificent. The air sucked out of the room, Arthur Blackwell's eyes fixed on Marcus. The presentation, the strategy, the career all evaporating under the fluorescent lights. Marcus's face, I pictured it, would be a mottled, sickly white. He would be stammering. This is a misunderstanding, a private matter. He reached a trembling hand for the papers, and at that exact, beautiful moment, as his fingers touched the petition, a phone buzzed on the glass tabletop, then another, then a third. In seconds, the boardroom was filled with a chorus of vibrations. It was a symphony of chaos. Every member of the board, including Arthur Blackwell, looked down at their device. This, I had not planned. This was not Dinah's work. This was a gift from Chloe Jensen. My lawyer's office email had worked better than I could have dreamed. It had sent the 26-year-old brand specialist into a tailspin of pure, uncut panic. Believing I was coming for her, suing her, she had done the stupidest, most glorious thing imaginable. She had tried to get ahead of the story. She had written an email. The subject line, which every board member was now reading, was the truth about Marcus Thorne and Alara Vance. And she hadn't just sent it to me. In her terror, she had sent it to the entire Logicor senior leadership listserv. It was a masterpiece of self-immolation, a hysterical, typo-riddled confession dressed up as a victim's plea. She claimed she was the one being harassed. She claimed I, the unstable wife, had threatened her. And then, the kill shot. The sentence that sealed their fate. This wasn't some cheap affair. She had written, "Marcus and I are in love. He was trapped in a cold, dead marriage with a woman who didn't understand him. He was going to leave her anyway. This is true love and I won't be bullied." She had just confirmed the adultery. In writing. To his CEO. In the boardroom, Marcus looked up from the divorce papers, his mouth opening and closing, only to see Arthur Blackwell slowly, deliberately, reading the email on his phone. Blackwell, I was told, didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He just looked at Marcus, his face a mask of cold fury. "You brought this filth into my company." "Arthur, no!" Marcus pleaded. She's unstable. This is my wife, Alara. She put her up to this. It's a lie." "A lie," Blackwell said, holding up his phone. "She seems to think it's true love. She also seems to think you used company funds for a trip to Switzerland with her." Marcus froze. He had forgotten about the expense reports. Blackwell looked at his assistant by the door. Security. 2 uniformed guards, the ones who usually just checked employee badges, walked into the boardroom. They moved toward Marcus. "You can't do this," Marcus shouted, finally finding his voice. "This is about my divorce." Blackwell stood up. "No, Mr. Thorne, this is about our morals clause. You are suspended, effective immediately. Get him out of my sight." Marcus Thorne was physically escorted out of his own board meeting, not because his wife had finally left him, but because his mistress, in a fit of beige-colored panic, had just set his entire career on fire. I was at a spa, not a sterile beige one, but a small, private one built into a repurposed botanical garden. I was horizontal, being meticulously massaged with hot stones. My phone was on silent, locked in a teakwood box. When the massage was over, I retrieved it. The screen was a wall of frantic red, 22 missed calls, all from Marcus. I didn't call him back immediately. I changed into a robe. I ordered a glass of champagne. I walked to the outdoor terrace and lowered myself into the bubbling, steaming hot tub. The city was a distant, silent skyline. Only then, with the warm water massaging my shoulders and the glass cold in my hand, did I dial his number. He picked up on the first ring, but he didn't say hello. He exploded. "What did you do?" It was a raw, guttural scream, a sound I had never heard from him. It was the sound of a god discovering he was mortal. I held the phone slightly away from my ear, taking a small sip of champagne. "Marcus, you sound stressed." "Stressed you did this. You ruined me. What did you say to her? What did you say to Chloe?" I feigned confusion, injecting a note of light, airy boredom into my voice. "Me. I'm getting a manicure. Marcus, what on earth are you talking about? Who is Chloe?" "Don't," he choked. "Don't you play dumb with me? The email, the meeting, the papers." "Oh, those," I said, as if just remembering. "Yes, I suppose you would have received those by now." They suspended me, he shrieked. Right in the middle of the boardroom, Arthur Blackwell. He had me walked out by security. Me because of your email. My email. I asked, swirling the champagne. Marcus, I didn't send an email. The one from Chloe Yu. You threatened her. You made her panic. She sent it to everyone, the whole board. They all know. So, to be clear, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. You are blaming me for an email your mistress wrote, confessing to your affair, which got you suspended. Am I getting that right? They cited the morals clause? He sputtered, as if the very words were an offense. That stupid, outdated morals clause my career. Ilara, it's over. I let the silence hang for a moment, punctuated only by the soft bubbling of the water. Oh, really? A morals clause? That sounds very practical. Marcus. Very real world. The use of his own word hit him. The screaming stopped, replaced by a desperate, gasping sound. He was shifting tactics. The predator was becoming a beggar. Listen, he said, his voice dropping to a wet, pleading rasp. Baby, Ilara, listen to me. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry. I was confused. I was under so much pressure. It was Chloe. She pushed me. She's manipulative. It was all her idea. Her idea to forge my signature on a $250,000 loan. 2. He went silent. He hadn't known I knew that. Ilara. Okay. He scrambled. Okay. That was a mistake. A temporary thing. I was going to pay it back. I was going to pay all of it back. We can fix this. You have to call them. Call your lawyers. Withdraw the petition. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. We can go to therapy. We can solve this. We are going to solve this. Marcus, I said, my voice as cold and clear as the winter air. Dinah Hawes will be in touch with your lawyer to arrange the settlement. I don't have a lawyer, he screamed, the panic returning full force. How can I get a lawyer? I can't pay one. I have no money. Ilara. You froze everything, the Amex, the checking, even my personal account. It's all frozen. I'm locked out. I can't even buy gas. I stood up slowly in the hot tub, the water cascading off my robe. I looked out at the city, his glass tower just visible in the distance. Don't worry, Marcus, I said, my voice flat and final. You made an investment. You still have Chloe's personal branding trust fund. Oh, wait. I paused, letting him hang in the void. That's right. You used my money to pay for her future, and now you have neither. What a terrible, impractical investment. Goodbye, Marcus. I hung up. I finished my champagne. I did not, in fact, get a manicure. I went home to change. The first mediation session was not held in a courtroom. It was in a beige, windowless room in a downtown office building, chosen for its suffocating neutrality. I had not seen Marcus in 2 weeks. He looked deflated. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his skin was gray, and he was flanked by a man who looked like he advertised on the side of a bus. He had clearly borrowed money from his humiliated parents to afford this B-list lawyer. I sat next to Dina. I was wearing a charcoal gray suit from Atelier Cinder with a razor-sharp silhouette. Dina was, as always, a monolith of black. Marcus's lawyer, a man named Krieg, shuffled his papers. My client is prepared to be reasonable, he began, his voice oily. We understand this is an emotional time. We are, of course, seeking the standard 50% of all marital assets, including the significant appreciation in value on the Willow Creek property, which my client's executive salary helped maintain. He smiled, as if this was all a very normal transaction. Dina did not smile. She did not speak. She simply took a slender black file from her briefcase and, with one finger, pushed it across the polished table. It slid to a perfect stop, directly in front of Krieg. Krieg looked at it, confused. What's this? We haven't entered discovery yet. "Open it," Dina said. He did. He put on a pair of cheap reading glasses. He read the first page. His professional smile twitched. He read the second page, the one with the high-resolution screenshot of the forged electronic signature. He read the third page, the one with the bank and wire fraud statutes highlighted in yellow. Krieg's face went from beige to a pale, clammy white. He slowly took off his glasses. He looked at Dina, then at me, then at his own client. This is a very serious allegation," he whispered. "No," Dina said, her voice a flat, cold instrument. "That is a very serious fact, a criminal one. Bank fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft. We're looking at a minimum of 5 to 7 years in a federal facility." Krieg swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "My client," Dina continued, gesturing to me, "is not a vindictive woman. She has no desire to see your client in prison. She is willing to not forward this file to the district attorney's office." "In exchange for what?" Krieg asked, his voice barely audible. "In exchange for a full and uncontested divorce. He walks away with the clothes on his back, the leased Audi his name is on, and the $30,000 in credit card debt he personally accrued while buying beige furniture. He signs away all rights to the house, all joint accounts, all investments, and any and all future claims. He leaves with his debt and his freedom. That is the deal." For the first time, Marcus spoke. It wasn't a voice. It was a roar. "No, you can't." He surged to his feet, his chair screeching backward. "You bitch, you can't do that." "The house, the investments, I managed them. I built that portfolio. I helped you." The room was silent. Krieg looked like he wanted to be sick. I turned my head and looked at Marcus. It was the first time I had made eye contact with him. I spoke for the first time, my voice quiet, but cutting through his rage like a scalpel. "Marcus," I said, "you managed my $150,000 decoy fund into $0 in 6 months." He stared at me, his mouth open, confused. I continued, "You were never managing anything. You were just a peacock, let loose in a small cage. You never even knew about my mother's $5 million trust." The words hung in the dead air. $5 million. Krieg, the B-list lawyer, slowly turned his head to look at his own client. His eyes were wide. A $5 million trust. Marcus was trapped. He looked at his lawyer's shocked face, then at Dinah's smug one, then at me. He saw the fortress walls he had never known existed. He saw the checkmate. He was cornered, and like any cornered animal, he didn't attack with logic. He attacked with his base, ugliest instinct. His face contorted in a mask of pure, desperate hatred. "You're lying," he screamed at me, his voice cracking. "That's a lie. If you had $5 million, if you had any real money, then why the hell do you always dress like a tattered crow?" He signed the papers. He had no choice. The alternative was a courtroom, a criminal charge, and the end of everything. He chose to simply be a ghost. The locks on the Willow Creek house were changed an hour after he signed. I had his few remaining personal items, his generic suits, his Apex Predator books boxed up and sent to a P.O. address. I later found out he was living in a grim, extended-stay service apartment by the highway, the kind that smelled of stale cigarettes and regret. Logicor, naturally, made his suspension permanent. The morals clause was just the beginning. Once Dinah's asset freeze hit, the company's internal audit was triggered, and they discovered the fraudulent expense reports for the Swiss trip. Marcus Thorne was not just an adulterer, he was a common thief. That, combined with Chloe's email, made him toxic. No logistics or tech firm in the country would touch him. His career wasn't over, it was annihilated. And Chloe. The moment Marcus's money was gone, so was she. Her beige world, it turned out, required a constant inflow of cash. She performed a spectacular public pivot. Her Instagram, once filled with coy pictures of expensive fake bags and first-class cabins, was wiped clean. It was replaced by a long, tearful post. "I am on a new journey of healing and light," she wrote, accompanying a photo of herself in a yoga pose on a mountain. "I am shedding all toxic masculine energy from my life and finding my true, authentic self." She finished by tagging her new, very handsome yoga instructor. The final beautiful insult came a week later. I received a frantic, misspelled text from Chloe herself. "He lied to me. The bags are fake. I had them authenticated. I'm suing him." She had discovered the replica fraud. My only reply was to forward the text to Dina, who simply replied, "Perfect." Marcus, it seemed, was now being hunted by both women he had tried to build his new life with, which is why, I suppose, he ended up on my doorstep, or rather, at my front gate. It was late, past 11 p.m. I was in my study, finalizing a new fabric order with a mill in Japan, when the security panel chimed. I clicked on the video feed, and there he was. It was a pathetic sight. He was illuminated in the harsh white security light, his hair unkempt, his wrinkled suit from the mediation session still on his back. He was leaning on the intercom, drunk, a bottle of cheap whiskey in his hand. He pressed the button again. A long, desperate buzz. I turned on the audio. "Alara, Alara, I know you're in there. Pick up the damn phone. Pick up." I pressed the talk button. "This is a private residence," I said, my voice electronically flat. "You are trespassing." "Alara," he cried, a strange mix of a sob and a snarl. He pressed his face close to the camera. "Alara, please. You have to listen to me. You've ruined me. Everything. It's all gone. You did this." I watched him, this broken, empty man, fogging up the camera lens. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't here for forgiveness. He was here to assign blame. "It's all your fault," he shouted, his voice cracking. "All of it. It was always your fault. Your taste." He spat the word. "Your weird art, your weird clothes, your weird books." I was suffocating. Ilara drowning in it. You and your goddamn mother. Always trying to be different. Always making me feel... He stopped, his breath hitching. He took a long pull from the bottle. And then, the final ugly truth came spilling out. The one thing he had hidden beneath all the bravado. "I cheated because of Chloe." He confessed, not to me, but to the gate. "And you know why. Because she's normal. She's easy. She wears beige." He was weeping now. Fat, drunken tears rolling down his cheeks. "She's simple. She's understandable. She doesn't have a $5 million secret. She doesn't wear things that I don't get. She doesn't make me feel stupid. You always made me feel so goddamn stupid." The confession hung in the cold night air. It was the most honest thing he had ever said. He hadn't just wanted my money. He had wanted to destroy the one thing about me he could never control my mind. He hated me, not because I was strange, but because he was simple. I looked at his broken, pathetic image on the screen. "Thank you for confirming, Marcus," I said softly to the empty room. "You are stupid." I pressed the talk button one last time. "I am calling security." "No, wait. Alara, please." I cut the audio. I dialed the private security firm that patrolled the estates. As I described the man trespassing at my gate, my computer chimed with a new email. I clicked on it while the security dispatcher was talking. "From the Met Faction Gala Committee subject, your confirmation, guest of honor. Dear Ms. Advance, your tickets are confirmed. We are so thrilled to host you. We have arranged your flight and car service. We eagerly await the arrival of the year's most celebrated designer, Armand, and of course, his honored guest. Security was on its way. Armand was on his way." I deleted the email. I already knew. The Met Faction Gala was not a party. It was a battlefield, the most prestigious, most brutal, most photographed battlefield in American fashion, held in a cavernous New York museum. I did not walk the red carpet. I arrived with Armand, and we were swept through a private entrance. The theme was architectural echoes, and I was the building. The dress, it was not a dress. It was a masterpiece. Armand had created a column of fabric that seemed to be spun from liquid metal and solid shadow. It was structural, severe, and utterly beautiful. It defied gravity, clinging to my body in ways that seemed impossible. It was the physical manifestation of the $5 million of my mother's legacy, of 4 years of silent, focused work. The press was in a frenzy. Flashes erupted. They knew Armand, the phantom, but they had no idea who I was. I was just a mystery woman, and the speculation was electric. We moved inside. The room was a sea of famous faces and desperate ambition. I found our table, front and center, but I didn't sit. "I need a drink," I said to Armand. He, in his signature dark glasses, just nodded. "I will wait for you," he said. I moved toward the main bar, a slow, deliberate procession. The dress made noise, a soft shush like sharpened steel. And that's when I saw him. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't a +1. He was working. Marcus, my husband, my peacock. He was wearing a tight black waiter's uniform, holding a silver tray loaded with flutes of champagne. He looked thin, exhausted, and utterly defeated. He must have taken the temp job, any job, to pay Krieg, his B-list lawyer. He was moving through the crowd, his eyes down, his face a mask of practiced servitude. Champagne, champagne. He didn't see me until he was 5 feet away. He looked up, annoyed that a guest was blocking his path. His eyes met mine. Recognition, disbelief, horror. It all happened in one agonizing second. He looked at me, the tattered crow. He looked at the dress, a piece of art that cost more than his entire year's salary had. He looked at my face, calm, cold, and victorious. The tray slipped from his nerveless fingers. It was a spectacular crash. The silver clanged on the marble floor. A dozen crystal flutes shattered, sending a spray of glass and expensive champagne across the floor, splashing the hems of gowns near him. The music seemed to dip. The conversation died. Everyone turned to look at the clumsy waiter. Security, 2 men in sharp black suits, started to move toward him, annoyance on their faces. Marcus was frozen, staring at me, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shame. I looked at the security guard nearest to me, and I gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of my head. Just a tiny motion. The guard paused, confused, but he stopped. I wanted Marcus to stay. I wanted him to see the finale. I wanted him to have a front-row seat to his own execution. The lights in the gala dimmed. A voice boomed over the speakers, announcing the main event. And now, the award for Designer of the Year. Marcus was still on his knees, fumbling with broken glass. As a supervisor hissed at him to get up, the nominees were listed, and then, the winner is Armand for Atelier Cinder. The room erupted in polite, surprised applause. Armand, who had never done an interview, who had never shown his face, was a legend. He stood, kissed my hand, and walked onto the stage. He took the statue, a sleek, abstract piece of metal. He stood at the podium in his dark glasses, and the room went silent. "Thank you," he said, his voice a low Belgian rumble. "People ask me how a brand with no name, no history, could change this industry in one night. They call me a genius." He paused. "They are wrong." He looked out, across the crowd, his head turning until his black glasses seemed to pointed directly at me. "The true genius is my investor, the one who found me, the one who believed in me when I had nothing but a few sketches and a vision, the one person who had the foresight to see what all of you could not, The room was holding its breath. I could see Marcus, standing by a service door, security on either side, being told to wait. He was watching the stage, his face pale. Armand continued, "The real genius is a woman whose vision was so pure, so strong, that she was willing to bet everything on it. A woman whose ex-husband recently mocked her fashion sense." A dead, cold silence fell over the room. It was the sound of 1,000 people leaning in. "This honor," Armand said, lifting the statue, "is not mine. It belongs to the one who funded this, the one who built this, my main investor, Alara Vance." He turned and held his hand out, directly to me. Every spotlight in the room, hundreds of them, swiveled and crashed onto me at the table. Every camera, every phone, every pair of eyes turned. A tidal wave of attention. I stood up, the liquid metal of my dress catching the light, blinding them, and across the room, in the shadows by the exit, I saw the final, perfect image. As the entire world turned to me in my moment of absolute triumph, the 2 security guards finally grabbed Marcus by his arms. He was not a guest. He was not a waiter. He was just trash, and they dragged him out of the room, into the darkness, in his final utter disgrace. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below and let's chat about your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it some extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.